more minutes. Podcaster doesn't usually like people looking at the back of their head the whole time, but I guess that's how it's going to be today. Thanks for coming, everybody. There are still people coming in, so it pays to wait. Yeah, if you could turn off or silence your phone, that'll be nice. That'll be helpful. All right, good morning, and thank you everybody for being here. My name is Todd Butterfield. I'm a father, husband, retired public educator, and now an amateur podcaster, among many other things. First and foremost, it's nice to have my neighbors here, because we are all neighbors. I like the phrase, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and hopefully we'll be like that this morning. We are here to learn more about each candidate for Yamhill County Commissioner, position number 2. The participants are Bubba David King and Lindsay Burschauer. David Wall is also running. He declined to participate. Audience, please be respectful, no booing, and no interrupting, please. Candidates, please don't interrupt each other, and stay within the time frames. Stop at the bell or the beep or the red card. They'll have colored cards to tell them how much time is left. We'll talk about that more in a second. So a coin toss has determined who will begin speaking, and that person could defer to the other, but ultimately the beginning speaker will be Ms. Burschauer. Each candidate will have an opening statement of 3 minutes. There are 9 questions to be asked, and candidate 1 will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to answer. Candidate 2 will have 3 minutes to answer, and candidate 1 will have 30 more seconds to rebut candidate 2, should they desire. Then we'll switch. Question number 2 goes to candidate 2, and so on. We have people who are keeping time, and they will have a green card to start speaking. The yellow card will be 15 seconds remains, and the red card is please stop speaking. They don't have to use up all the time, so it's okay. So this is my first time moderating a debate of this style. I assure you my goal is to be equal and fair. The candidates have had the questions for weeks, so there weren't any surprises. We're not taking audience questions. It's going to be pretty straightforward. There was no consultation on the questions with anyone related to either of the candidates, if that makes sense. So they didn't have any part in that. Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, okay, let's do that. Surprised me. I pledge allegiance You may be seated. All right. Is this loud enough? I'm going to get that closer. It's kind of a the kind of mic that works better when you're closer to it. Ms. Burschauer, you may present your opening statement.
Make sure it's working. There we go. Well, thank you, Todd. Thank you for hosting today, and thank you, We Are MAC, for being the sponsor of this event. This is really exciting. For those who are watching online, the room is packed. It's standing room only and out into the hallway, so it's exciting to be here. We didn't have these forums in 2020 when I ran the first time, so I missed out on all of this, so I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm Commissioner Lindsay Burschauer. I serve as the chair of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners. I also serve as the Association of Oregon Counties District 6 chair, which covers Marion, Polk, and Yamhill County. So I represent all 3 counties at the statewide level when we talk about regional priorities. I am married to Mike Firestone, my husband. We have 3 children. We have kids in 3 different schools, Chemeketa and McMinnville High, and also Newburgh High. So we're kind of all over the county. I've been a small business owner since 2013. My husband and I are small business owners. We own ag businesses. My husband is a 5th generation farming family, so very proud of that. And this will be my 2nd term. I won the first time in May of 2020 in the primary. And because I voted to keep term limits for county commissioners, we are capped at 3 terms, and so this will be the 2nd of 3 terms. Prior to being a commissioner, I served on the county budget committee. We have a 3-person citizen budget committee that helps us as commissioners inform budget priorities and also helps us scrutinize some of the budget discussions and tough decisions that we have to make, frankly. And prior to that, I also served on the Newburgh Rural Fire Protection Board prior to the city of Newburgh annexing into TVFNR. I am honored to have the endorsement of Sheriff Sam Elliott. He is an incredible man of integrity, and he is serving this county very well and really bringing that department into the next phases of what's facing law enforcement in our state. We're very proud of him. I am also honored to be endorsed by a distinguished guest today who is in the audience, former Commissioner Dennis Gex. I've appreciated his leadership in the past and also his guidance and mentorship of me as I've gone through this process. And also Representative Anna Scharf. I saw her somewhere here in the audience. So thank you, Anna, for your support. It's appreciated. We're going to get into the issues, and I look forward to talking in more detail about how I've been working hard for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. King?
You'll have to excuse me. I'm still getting over a little bit of a cough residual, but my name's Bubba King. My real name's David, but my entire life people have called me Bubba. You can choose which one you want. If you call me David, I might take a second to respond though. But I'm a farmer. I fell in love with farming about 15 years ago. And I'm a first generation, but my wife comes from she's fifth generation Newburgh, and her grandparents were farmers and so on and so forth. So I'm very honored. It took me a long time to decide to call myself a farmer because I respect the occupation so much. I've got two kids, 11 and 9. They both go to a little country school out in Newburgh, Ewing Young, just down the road from where we live. If I'm not attending city councils with Kit, I'm running them around to soccer and dance and all the fun stuff that they get to do. I was a stay-at-home dad for about 8 years, which was maybe one of the highlights of my life so far. A few years back, we decided to get involved civically, though. We owned a pizza restaurant in Newburgh, Honey Pie, and we wanted to give back to our community. In that time, within Newburgh, where I live, I was asked to be on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and in a year I became president. I was asked to be on SDC committee, System Development Charges, and where we lowered a lot of city fees. And most recently, just as of I think last week, I don't see Mayor Bill here, maybe he's in the back, but I'm almost positive I'm on a urban renewal committee as well for the Citizens Advisory. So I still stay engaged pretty often while running for county commissioner. I attend every city council that I can. I attend every board of commissioners meetings that I can. This is an education. This is continued to build relationships around the county outside of Newburgh where I live. So that's who I am. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Todd, and We Are Mac, and everybody that gave up their Saturday morning to be here. This means a lot, and if you're watching on TV, you're a little bit better off than all the people standing here today. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. First question goes to Ms. Bershauer. What are the current Yamhill County budget challenges, and how can you effectively project future budgets?
Thank you. So our budget is roughly around $180 million. It fluctuated with ARPA, but it kind of sits around $180 million. And we are not unlike other governments. Our budget challenges are really that our expenditures are outpacing our revenue. Our tax rate hasn't changed in over 25 years, and that's because of state law. However, we really don't have very many places to go to find additional revenue other than property taxes and state and federal funds. And so when you're looking at personnel costs that have increased so rapidly, I was talking to our county assessor, and he mentioned that over the span of about the past 5 years, his personnel costs have increased almost 50%. That's a huge increase for us to bear when our revenue is really only increasing by about 3 to 4% a year. We also offer extremely lucrative is not the right term, very healthy benefits packages. Between healthcare, we pay almost all of our employee healthcare premiums, as well as retirement, and obviously the constraints and unfunded liabilities of PERS. So those pieces are also increasing. We have some unique challenges this year. I forgot to mention, we have 5 unions. So we are dealing with 5 unions and 5 different collective bargaining agreements that come into play at different times. And so having to absorb that is also a significant challenge when we look at forecasting ahead. This year, with the economic situation we're facing, with the interest rates so high, people are not buying homes. They are not refinancing. The recordings in our clerk's office are down almost 40% year over year. So that's a huge hit to her budget. And as you know, the clerk is a critical function of the county. She runs our elections. And so those are some of the things that we're looking to tackle in this budget cycle, which is coming up here at the end of the month. And one of the things that's been important to me is to have private sector folks on our citizen budget committee, because they have an outside perspective of what's happening outside of sort of the government bubble, and they can help inform our decisions. Thank you.
Mr. King.
It's clear that when we look at the structural budget deficit, and that is what Commissioner Berschauer was referring to, is essentially property taxes don't pay the bills. But there are other avenues of finding resources for our county. Commissioner Berschauer has refused to accept quite a bit of money in a lot of forms, even outside of grants. And I've heard her say that when we're speaking of grants, that it's not free money. Somebody's paying for it. And I'm here to tell you that that's absolutely true. I am. You are. It is our money. It is money that we paid in taxes to the state and then made back available for us. So if we aren't advocating for every single dollar that we can, that means that every single dollar is going somewhere else. And that money is going to every other community, like Portland, like Washington County, or Clackamas County. And I want my money to come back here. That's all I got.
Ms. Berschauer, your rebuttal, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Well, without a specific example that would be provided by my opponent, I will say in general that we scrutinize every single dollar that comes in front of us, because a responsible elected official does not just accept money without a purpose. That is not a responsible way of governing. And so we scrutinize everything that comes in front of us. We make sure that the grant funds go to the highest, the highest priorities. And if we can't find a home for them, we don't accept them.
Thank you. I bet you wish you had 60 seconds instead of 30 right there. Question number 2. On April 1st, the governor's, just a couple weeks ago, the governor signed into law HB 4002A, a bill reversing much of Oregon's drug decriminalization experiment per Measure 110 in response to a deadly addiction crisis plaguing major cities, suburban neighborhoods, and rural communities across the state. HB 4002 recriminalized small amounts of certain hard drug possession. That's just background. What should be the county's response to the drug problem, Mr. King?
Growing up, my family was littered with addiction every single type you could find. Thankfully, I've never had to struggle with addiction, but it definitely gives me a heart for those people who are in recovery or recovered or addicted. I would be on the side of those people who thought that 110 was a complete disaster. I think all too often the state puts bills out and we vote on them, and there's no actual plan when they get passed. 114 was another prime example of that. It took 2 years for funding to get released for 110, and I'm afraid that the same will happen with House Bill 4002. This is new. I haven't spent a lot of time studying it, but that's what I'm afraid of. I know that in Newburgh's budget Newburgh PD spends about 75% of their budget responding to mental health and addiction calls. Now imagine if they had that money and we find other resources and we actively work to get those grants that Ms. Bershauer was saying needed a home, that if we invested that money into mental health and addiction services, so the police get to keep their money that they already have and respond to violent crimes, and we are investing in our community for addiction services. It's game over if we get to do that, right? And so my plan when elected is I'll work with Director Manfred and Sheriff Elliott and come at this in a place of balance to figure out resources and what they need. And this is a long-term plan. This isn't just, it's the county's job to lead this effort, but it will take every single city and citizen to help with this. This isn't just this isn't a me or a her problem. This is an every single one of us. And so that's where I come from.
Ms. Bershauer.
Thank you. So Measure 110, when it passed, it removed what we call the hook. So if you talk to our judges, they'll tell you that when people, before Measure 110, we at least had a mechanism to bring people into the system so that we could then serve them with what they needed. And oftentimes, and Yamhill County specifically has been at the leading edge of deflection programs. We called them diversion. It's really the same thing. But Measure 110 removed the hook. What House Bill 4002 does, it brings it back. Now, the legislative intent is that they don't want us putting people in jail for possession, and that's fine, but we still have to have the mechanism to, when we interact with folks on the streets or folks who are in possession of hard drugs, we need to have something that brings them into our system. We have very healthy diversion programs. Yamhill County has one of the oldest drug courts in the state. We have been very proactive and progressive, if you will, on really restorative justice, not punitive justice. I've been leading with leaders in the county, the sheriff, the DA, chiefs of police in your towns, and we've been meeting almost every 2 weeks to try and figure out how Yamhill County can accept the terms of House Bill 4002 and what that looks like for us. We will receive about $500,000. Sounds like a lot of money. It's really not a lot of money when you're trying to stand up a new program. And so what we will likely do is use that money for somebody called a, quote, navigator. It's someone who can really come alongside individuals who come into our care and help navigate them through what they need for addiction service. And if that's not working, and that is being violated or just ignored, then there will be that hook to bring them into the jail. However, this all sounds great, but it will bottleneck unless we invest in a sobering center or residential treatment facility centers. We have nowhere to send people. At the moment, we are sending people out of the county to receive addiction treatment. The Willamette Valley Hospital opened recently, fairly recently, opened 3 beds, but they're voluntary. And that's not nearly enough to serve the population that we need to serve. And so we need to be investing in the infrastructure here. And if we can't afford to do it here specifically in Yamhill County, it needs to be regional so that we have a facility we can share with other surrounding counties. We have opioid settlement funds. I don't know if you've been watching the federal trials and settlements, but we have opioid settlement funds that are coming into our county, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've set aside, and we are looking to partner with recovery, with the recovery community in Yamhill County for those centers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. King, your 30-second rebuttal.
I don't disagree with much of what Commissioner Berschauer had to say there. What I will say is that it is our job as county commissioners to find resources, and you're going to hear me say this a lot today. Find resources and get out of the way. That is the job, right? And so that's what I intend to do in this, is find more resources for those programs that she's talking about. And we have examples of this working in Newburgh, in Yamhill County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Question 3. What should county COVID, or let's just say disease X, policy be in respect to future mandates such as vaccine requirements or lockdowns from the state or federal level? Ms. Berschauer?
Thank you. Well, as someone who lived through COVID as an elected official, I would say that my first knee-jerk response would be to elect a governor who will seek to protect civil liberties and understands that medical freedom is a civil liberty. We need to learn from our mistakes. Oregon was one of the few states that was actually applying these draconian measures, these statewide mandates and lockdowns. Other states were not doing that. And hindsight has shown us that they didn't fare any worse than we did, right? We lost lives, we lost jobs, we lost student achievement, we lost small businesses. And honestly, during COVID, it felt like Commissioner Sterrett and I were gearing up for battle every week. It was very traumatic, very intense, because the state was really focused on locking everything down, and they didn't respond to any of the county's concerns about what it meant for civil liberties. We had nurses. I had nurses calling me from the local hospital, Willamette Valley Hospital, begging me to help them keep their jobs because they were being told they're going to lose their jobs. We had restaurant owners in Carlton reaching out to us saying, hey, can you please send us the risk levels? You remember the risk levels that we were bouncing up and down in? Can you send us those right away so that we can hire really quickly, retool, and get our business open potentially outside the next day? That's how much people were suffering. We have students in depression, sinking into depression over not being in school, and obviously our addiction rates rose. In the future, I would do exactly what we did, which is fight for our constituents and fight to protect your civil liberties. We are the local public health authority, and one of the things that commissioners said across the state was, we know how to handle and manage a crisis. That is literally what we do. We are the public health authority. Please let us do it. I am proud to be the sponsor of the county policy to protect our county employees from being fired for a personal medical choice. I said, so long as I'm here, nobody's losing their job over a personal medical choice, and no employee lost their job. I'm very proud of that. So I'd say do exactly what we did, but we need a governor who understands and will protect constitutional liberties.
Thank you very much. Mr. King, you have 3 minutes to answer the question.
When it comes to making decisions for our bodies, we're Americans. We get presented with choices, and we get to make our own. It's my perspective on a disease as an elected official that, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not anything. We have a very talented director of public health, and it's my job to support that person. In fact, all of our department heads, it's our job to support them. They are the professionals in their fields. And public shaming of a hired department head is completely irresponsible and intolerable. All that being said, the impact of COVID-19 on businesses, on kids, on families, on every single one of us here today was very, very hard. I mean, I still meet with friends, and even just over Easter, we met with friends that we kind of potted up with, remember? And oh my God, remember how terrible that was? We sat in your greenhouse and 7 feet away from each other just to be safe. But we came up, my family and I came up with creative solutions to the problem. We started a farm school, right? I got 9 of our friends, 9 kids, came to our house every single day, and we hired a teacher so that way my kids can continue to learn. And I know that not every family can do that. Not every family has the resources to do that. But it's those types of creative thinking, that kind of creative thinking, that really matters in these types of things, and not just blanket statements of closures and, need to be nimble. Local government needs to be nimble enough to move around variance and real-time information, not blanket statements with suggestions from the state.
Thank you. Ms. Bershauer, 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just want to remind folks that the decisions during COVID that were coming out of the state were coming from unelected bureaucrats with absolutely no medical experience. That's what we were facing on a weekly basis. And most of those policies have been canceled. And hindsight is 2020, right? We did exactly what we should have done, which is err on the side of protecting civil liberties and individual freedoms. When it comes to a public health director, I want to remind folks that commissioners are responsible for setting policy because we are directly accountable to you, not department heads. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 4. What are county priorities for land use at the local level? And from your perspective, Mr. King?
So this is a big one because it's the job, right? Is land use and budget. So I'll give just a small example rather than a TED Talk. 8 years ago, my family and I bought a farm. I'd been farming for a few years on leased and borrowed property, but when we bought our farm, we couldn't really afford it. We had to get creative in how to pay our mortgage, but we made the leap of faith because I loved it and believe in it so much. We continue to see an age gap in farming. When I bought my farm, we were really one of the younger farmers, and when I started farming, one of the youngest farmers around in the state. Now, the example of where we can find more money, one lever that we get to do is enabling people within the county and enabling or instituting a TLT tax. That stands for transient lodging tax, and essentially it's heads and beds. When somebody that doesn't live here comes to stay here, and if you want to go stay at the Atticus or something, you would probably pay this. You pay this too, but when somebody who's not from here comes here, they pay a tax. So it's not a tax on you and me. It's a tax of people coming to take advantage of our beautiful resources that we have in Yamhill County. So, and Commissioner Bershauer has pushed this away on more than one occasion because we don't like taxes. And so I think that this is a prime example of more resources. And when I've talked to not only short-term rental owners, but the billionaires that are propping up hotels around the county, they are more than happy to pay a tax to institute this tax, because the success of Yamhill County is our success and it's their success. And so I believe that it's very important to look for solutions like this, and it will enable farmers to be able to purchase property in a very expensive market and give them tools to be successful.
Thank you. Ms. Bershauer, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I am proud to be endorsed by the Oregon Property Owners Association. This group has been working in Oregon for decades to protect private property rights. And I have a very strong belief that more often than not, government is not interested in your private property rights. And in fact, that's how I came into office. We all know about the Yamhill West Sutter Trail. I'm not going to get into it. I don't have time. But I literally was elected based on a project that saw government overreach and a diminishment of private property rights. When we talk about land use priorities, we look to not only protect ag land, ag and timberland, but we also look at expanding business capacity in certain zones. So yesterday at the board meeting, we rezoned a property because if we didn't do something like that, we would have lost a business that has over 50 employees. So being flexible with our land use zones and policy is something that is really important. We need more industrial land. This is across the board, across the state. We need more industrial land that has a direct impact on businesses that want to locate here if we don't have that type of land. The board passed and approved ADUs, accessory dwelling units, in rural residential zones. And so doing our part for that missing housing or affordable housing, if you live in a rural residential zone, you can now have an accessory dwelling unit. If you have aging parents or younger children who can't find housing, that's an option. But really, we seek to uphold agricultural practices as well. When I first came into office, I had some wineries, very, very prominent wineries with great wine, by the way, come to me and say, hey, we don't really like that we have a marijuana facility next door and people are growing marijuana. It stinks and people come here and it's just not nice. And I said, yeah, I hear you. Maybe personally I agree with you on that, but my policy principle is that I protect all crops. And marijuana is a legal crop in the state of Oregon. And when you start applying time, place, and manner restrictions on a crop, it's a slippery slope. And the next thing you know, people will be going after dairy farms and everything else that stinks, right? And so you have to be very principled and really stand up to a lot of pressure. I support our wine industry, and so it was really hard to have that conversation. The same thing is true with psilocybin. We recently approved psilocybin, not only growing, but manufacturing, processing, and service centers to be able to serve it. That's not something I necessarily personally agree with, but I had to stick with my policy principle that I am going to protect a legal crop in the state of Oregon. It means the result of that is that we have consistency and we're not picking winners and losers, because when it comes to land use, it directly impacts your pocketbook.
Thank you. Mr. King, you have 30 seconds.
Well, the ADU change was actually a fire hazard map change from the state. So I don't think any one commissioner necessarily gets to take credit for that. It is important that we are finding alternatives for generational housing, and because again, that would enable other farmers to be able to buy houses and buy property to be able to farm. So I think that's all I have to say. All I get to say.
Good point. Question number 5. What are primary emphases for economic development from a county perspective? Ms. Burschauer?
Thank you. So we as a county have kind of taken what I have termed a do no harm approach, which is when it comes to economic development and our businesses, we don't want to be an extra layer of burdensome bureaucracy. We want to be the least restrictive we can possibly be, because we know businesses are also facing special districts and city regulations as well. And so we've taken that kind of to the next level. We advocate for businesses on a city level. My opponent will say that I'm going outside of the bounds or boundaries of my job, but these are shared constituents. Just because you live in a city doesn't mean you're not my constituent, right? So we have gone into cities, McMinnville specifically, about increasing taxes that directly impact the hospital or the steel mill, and we've advocated for them. We've gone into Newburgh and advocated against outrageous SDC fees, because as you know, it's prohibitive for business development expansion and housing. And so we've really tried to be proactive on encouraging policy that actually works for economic development. But oftentimes in Oregon, you hear of public-private partnerships. And we've tried to do this. We tried to do this recently with Hampton, with the SIP agreement, but it has to work for both sides. So if Hampton's getting a benefit, government on every level, all of our special districts also have to make sure they're protected. And we sought to do that through making sure that they would see more revenue coming into them with the SIP agreement than they would if the SIP didn't exist. And so we sought to protect both entities, and I think that's a really positive way of implementing those programs here in the county. Good.
Thank you. Mr. King, your 3-minute response.
Before you start, which timer am I looking at here? A little,
You guys off?
Okay, you guys need a second to fix anything, or are you good? Okay, 3 minutes over here. Yeah.
I knew that was going to happen.
It happens. So, Commissioner Bershauer was the leader of the Board of Commissioners to promote a termination of the SEDCOR contract. And SEDCOR is seen as the most respected economic development firm in the state. In every single community they're in, they have measurable results. SEDCOR was replaced by a friend, and I'm sure she's lovely, but she's a networker. She's not in the field of economic development. Now, instead of SEDCOR working for us and finding livable wage jobs, we're stuck and we're beholden to the economic development and the interest of Commissioner Bershauer's donors and friends. And she's right. I am going to say that she's out of her lane when she goes into these towns and argues with elected officials about tax rates and so on. Our job as county commissioners is to support, is to build relationship and support. What do you need and how can I support you? If you don't agree with it, then you don't have to support them, but we don't get to go tear them down. We don't get to be in their lane, and we don't get to dictate what they do. Bottom line.
Thank you. Ms. Bershauer, 30 seconds.
Thank you. We terminated the SEDCOR contract because it was costing you, the taxpayers, almost $14,000 a month, and we were receiving absolutely no benefit for it. All of the work SEDCOR was doing was focused on Marion County and Marion County specifically. I don't think that's a good value. We hired Joya Goodrum, who is a well-respected former chamber director, and she has done more to build relationships with our cities and our major employers throughout the county than SEDCOR ever did.
That should be your job.
And question 6. How have you previously responded to community needs during a challenging event? And if you don't have a specific event that you participated in, maybe you would have a scenario that you would propose with a response. Mr. King?
So I think that everybody in this room knows that Newburgh School Board has quite a bit of challenges in the last few years, and understatement, and it's also no secret that my wife and I were very involved in the new board's election. Recently, I was asked to be on a cabinet for the superintendent, Dr. Phillips. And Dr. Phillips was placed there by the old board, and the sides, right, the side game that we're all in of them and us and them, and really don't like Dr. Phillips because he was replaced by the new board. And the right doesn't like the new board. They keep attacking them. So instead of telling you all the things that I did back then, I'm going to continue to build community right now. And I'm going to say, if you're watching and you're on the left, leave Dr. Phillips alone. His success is Newburgh's success. And if you're on the right, I'm going to say, stop with the new board. Nobody remembers who board members are. If you're in the best school district in the state, you remember the staff and the kids that go there. Nobody remembers who a board member is. So please, let's bring it together and let's have one of the best school districts in the state. We get that opportunity because their success is our success. End of story.
Thank you. Ms. Bershauer, your 3-minute response.
Thank you. Well, as a parent who has a child in Newburgh schools, I concur that Dr. Phillips is an incredible individual and he's serving the district very well. But in response to my opponent's comment, a school board is an elected board. It is directly accountable to the people who live in the district, and I would never not encourage parents to continue to show up and voice their concerns and hold their elected officials accountable. Emergency event, one that comes to mind is the Labor Day fires. I was elected in May of 2020, and then, as you know, the Labor Day fires came around the September of 2020, and it really was kind of a crash course for me in how our emergency management team in the county works and interacts with FEMA and other departments. We camped out at the fairgrounds for, a week and a half, I think, triaging people from other counties coming in, livestock, horses, folks that literally left their homes in a matter of 5 minutes. It was a crazy time. The county did not charge anybody for anything, and I think that has been overlooked in that whole conversation. We did not charge a dime for anything. People from this community specifically brought in hay, feed, clothes, food, everything. And the county the county budget, the fairgrounds budget was short about $60,000. That's how much it costs to keep the lights on, the water, all of that stuff during the triage event at the fairgrounds for the wildfires. I'm very proud to have really pushed my colleagues at the time to backfill the fairgrounds budget and make sure that that their service to the community was rewarded in some ways, and that they weren't left with a big hole. But I'm very proud of that. I think the lesson, though, that I learned from that is not only how amazing our community is in a time of need and a time of crisis, but also that government can't solve all problems and doesn't solve all problems. It was a sense of, gosh, you know, this could happen again. How ready are we? And that has definitely impacted public policy on a county level, because we have now gone into programs that help teach our residents to be more ready for disasters, to be more ready for emergencies. But I was really blown away by the community. People were rallying on Facebook pages and Cowgirl 911, and you had folks offering up their horse trailers to bring in horses from complete strangers. It was just such a traumatic event, but very, it reassured for me that it was such an honor to be a part of this community and then to be sworn in to represent it.
Thank you. Mr. King, you have 30 seconds.
I'm good.
Thank you. Question number 7. Of county property and inventory, including parks, which one of them can be considered excess, perhaps even to be sold, and which need replacement? I realize that's a pretty big question, but do the best you can. Ms. Burschauer?
Thank you. So I kind of see this as two parts. One is the county office space and the facilities that we have that provide services to the public, and then we have, of course, county parks. We, as you know, exist in a lot of historical homes. They are very, very, very old, and they need a lot of repair. And we did a space needs analysis not too long ago, and I think for complete renovation or redo of all of our county properties, it was somewhere in the range of $300 million to $350 million. Not it. I'm not going to ask you for that kind of money. I'll send that to Kit. But it's just completely unrealistic. We're never going to get there. And so what we have tried to do is focus on consolidating and creating efficiencies. And unfortunately, our planning department, many of you have probably interacted with the planning department, but our planning department flooded. And then shortly after that, someone drove their car through it. And so we just have a unique set of problems that we're facing. The judges in our courthouse need a new courtroom. They're packed to the gills. They need a new courtroom. So we have a lot of sort of emergent space needs, and we have tried to pivot and find space for them. Right now, the planning department's in OMI. Potentially going forward, that might be a great space to consolidate and save money. But we are trying to do everything through a lens of how do we do this without asking the public for more money? How do we do it without going for an external bond? Because that's just another tax on you. The county doesn't have any debt. other than the money that we pay towards the Newburgh-Dundee bypass, we don't have any debt. So we have a lot of flexibility. We're in a really good position. And I think that if it comes down to needing to consolidate rapidly, we could probably get that done internally without having to ask taxpayers for money. In terms of parks, parks should remain parks. So we have explored partnership with CPRD or cities in terms of how parks should be used. But in my view is parks should remain open to the public. They should not be sold to any private person. I pushed for a $100,000 investment in a parks master plan a couple years ago. We are now getting that underway, which is really exciting to take inventory of what we have, but we need to do a better job of maintaining what we have.
Thank you. Mr. King, 3 minutes.
Yeah, so again, I know I've hounded on this TLT tax a lot, but I'm in that space, and so it's something I know quite a bit about. But if we had more funding that goes to the general fund, we could do just what she said. We could take care of our parks. Because we know that parks bring in money. There's leakage, right? It's a term that when people come here, they spend money. But it's not only beneficial for people who come here, because my top priority is the people who live here. And there is study after study that being outside is good for you. I don't know if you guys knew that, but I love it. I love being outside. But everybody knows that I love recreation and that I love that. So in terms of property that needs infrastructure change and so on, I mean, there's a ton of infrastructure, but really I see there's bridges in Willamina and Sheridan that are falling down and emergency services can't get across them. That's a problem. That's a public safety problem. So there's infrastructure all over the county that need help. The cities need help with their infrastructure just as much, but ultimately that's a big liability of being in a big place of liability, right? Of having aging infrastructure like bridges. I've only heard Commissioner Burschauer concerned about the liability of an RSV vaccine and the advertisement of it, not be concerned about the liability of infrastructure, and that's neglect. So I'd like to see that done very soon.
Thank you. Ms. Burschauer, 30 seconds.
Well, that's just silly, but I will address the TLT. I'm not against a TLT. I'm concerned about a TLT on a county level because often with a TLT, the hospitality industry has to babysit the marketing board. The marketing board is what receives the tax, and they're responsible for marketing the hospitality industry, and there seems to be an ongoing need to babysit them so they're getting good value out of it. The other thing is that when people come here, they come here to wine taste and do those popular things. It puts a strain on our roads and our law enforcement. So if we could use that money for those two things, then I would be on board with that.
Thank you. Question 8. That means we only have one left after this, so those standing up, I'm sorry. What can the county do to make housing more affordable to county residents? Mr. King?
Which number are we on here? 8, huh? I got my number.
Number 8.
I mean, it's back to that infrastructure, right? If we've all heard the term shovel ready, if we don't have the infrastructure in place, then there's not going to be any nobody's going to invest into the community, right? And so as that happens, we're not going to have workforce housing. We're not going to have, it's just not a priority right now. And so, as my term as a board member on the chamber, Commissioner Burschauer and myself have already addressed this, right? Is the SDCs, the system development charges in Newburgh. We've made that. There are levers that the government can pull to encourage builders to do this, right? And so what we did there as an example of what I worked on is making it childcare doesn't have to pay these charges for at least 2 years, and it'll get revisited. So it's not just another stagnant program that the government has. And we made it possible, if you were going to build an entry-level house under 1,000 square feet, you pay 75% less of these fees. And so it's our job as commissioners to lay the foundation required to enable economic development and support workforce housing. Because when people live here and work here, they spend money here, and the money stays here, and it stays in small businesses, and that's what's important to me. I'm a small business owner, and so when I choose to spend my money, I want to spend it here with people who own businesses here, and because I know that the money stays. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burschauer, your response to the question?
Thanks. The Board of Commissioners wholeheartedly supported the City of Newburgh's decision on the SDC reduction for childcare, and that was frankly a huge win. My opponent, his participation in that is definitely commendable because that was needed. I had a meeting yesterday with the governor's senior housing advisor, and the governor, as you know, in this recent session, passed a bill with a goal of building 36,000 homes per year. That is almost double what we have built in the past few years. It's very aggressive. But the other parts of the bill kind of nibbled around the edges of, how we could make that happen realistically. I don't know that it gets there. We were talking as counties that this is a multi-layered responsibility. It's not just counties, it's city, county, special district. Many of you might live in a special district where you get water from. They need to be at the table because you can't have new houses without water, right? The state as well. And so we've implemented some of the pieces of that bill. Part of it was to fast track UGB expansion, or at least the process for a UGB expansion. We agreed when the city of McMinnville came to us and asked us to partner with them. We said yes. City of Newburgh did as well. And so we've already implemented pieces of that. But the overarching cry from counties is that our cities do not have the money, multi-millions of dollars, to either repair aging infrastructure or expand and build new infrastructure, and the state is going to have to step up. The counties don't have that money either. I mentioned that we approved ADUs in rural residential zones. That was actually a state law that we implemented here and accepted and put into our zoning codes, so that is an option for housing. When we received ARPA money, we immediately turned around and sent almost $7 million. It was actually over $6.8 million directly into cities in the county for their aging city and water infrastructure. The list was long. There was no way we could fund it all, but we funneled as much as we could into those projects to help them. Some were very critical needs. Carleton's coming in mind if you live in Carleton. They were quite critical needs. I think the elephant in the room, though, is that this state has had land use policies for going back 50 years that simply limit supply, right? We live on about 2% of the land mass. Humans do live on about 2% of the land mass in Oregon. If you limit supply like that, and it's been done to protect farmland, right, ag land, which is noble, but if you limit supply, you are going to naturally have higher costs for housing. And so that needs to be tackled if we're going to see a solution long term.
Thank you. Mr. King, 30 seconds.
Well, I'm glad you're coming to the table on the infrastructure talk now. I've been at almost every Board of Commissioner meeting for a year, and I've never heard you guys talk about this. And so yeah, I think it's silly. And I even know city councilors that have never even spoken to you. So building those relationships is my priority, and something I've already been working on for the last year.
All right, thank you. Final question. Question number 9. What is the proper county level response to addressing the homeless and mental health challenges? I realize you've already alluded to some of that, but maybe we can dig a little deeper. Ms. Burschauer?
Thank you. So the county does have a role in this, and frankly, our jail has really become a mental health and addiction treatment facility. It has morphed into that based on the needs of the community. And so our shift has really been to kind of shift outward, right, into the communities. A recent example would be that, well, first of all, we've really beefed up our behavioral health teams, especially our crisis response teams. So we have teams of people who are trained to go out into the community 24/7, no matter what city, every part of the county, to respond to somebody having a mental health crisis. We have beefed that department up to be able to respond 24/7. And recently, we partnered with the city of McMinnville to provide really targeted services, not just for 3rd Street, but also there's other parts of McMinnville that are experiencing challenges. And it helps our law enforcement community, right? When we have trained individuals that are going out and meeting the needs and the services that these folks have. Often, they are medical services in addition to that. I talked about needing more addiction treatment facilities. This applies to that as well. So, houselessness, we have made several investments over the years. Recently, we visited the Yamhill County Gospel Rescue Mission. That is a nonprofit that we have invested significantly into. And we expanded the women and children's shelter that they have, and so they will have a brand new facility opening up here pretty soon, specifically for women and children who are struggling with lack of housing. They have a men's shelter as well, and they have a cold weather shelter. And they were one of the few shelters during the recent ice storm that were actually open and serving individuals. So we are really strong partners with them because they also have a level and a level of accountability, right, with the folks who come in. They want to get them on a better track, so they're looking to deal with the addiction crisis as well. I want to mention the program house. So their next plan is to build a program house, which means that they're going to actually teach life skills to individuals that they can be on a better path to stable housing.
Thank you. Mr. King?
So I've been in this space. My heart has been in this space for a very, very long time. I was raised in a church. My grandparents had their own church, a separate one, the summers, weekends. I went and fed 800 families groceries every single week. So this is very near and dear to my heart, right, of homelessness and addiction. And I can tell you that when I drove here, I mean, even took a little walk around the block to try to calm my nerves down before this silly thing. You can't throw a stone without seeing homeless people here. And my grandpa, who had that church, and my wife Sarah's grandpa, was also head of fish for a while in Newburgh, and they both taught me the same thing, that it's not government's job to take care of the poor. It's the church's job. Now, I agree with that mostly, right? It's everybody's job, and it's government's job to enable the best work of these people who are passionate in this space, because government's going to do a terrible job, right? So that is their job, right? They're passionate about this, they have the calling. And so to me, like I said at the beginning of this, I want to find resources and get out of the way. We don't have this big of a problem in Newburgh as we do in McMinnville. It's because the city has come to invest into the nonprofit sector, both churches and community-supported arenas that are here. And Commissioner Burschauer has also supported those efforts and helped with HHS. And I think it would be really great if we could do the same across the board for every city. And this isn't, like I said, this isn't a me or her problem. This is an everybody problem. And it is our job as the county. The county is a conduit for resources. So we are going to find money and get it to the places it needs to go and get out of the way.
Thank you, Ms. Bershauer. 30 seconds. Okay. At this point, you have the option, both of you, to have up to 3 minutes to wrap up and say, vote for me, or whatever it is you want
Vote for me.
to say. So, if that's, I don't know, did somebody back there say that, or was that oh, okay.
She gets to go first.
All right, yes. I believe,
Yeah, I go last. I go first. Sorry.
go ahead.
So I did write this down, this closing statement, what to leave you with. I'm not really a politician. I'm worse. I'm trying to be one. At the end of the day, my motivation to run for county commissioner is to contribute to our community so that my kids feel rooted and want to stay here. Remember, they're 6th generation Newburgh. There's concerns in our county from livability to safety that could very possibly prevent my kids from wanting to raise their families here. This isn't about who has the most government experience for the role of county commissioner, but rather who has the proven relationships built to make steps to achieve our common goals of livability, personal rights and liberties, and overall well-being. Commissioner Bershauer became resident of Yamhill County 8 years ago. She has been entrenched in Portland metro politics for years and sought positions of power, not positions of relationships. She wants you to believe that it's impossible to be nonpartisan. That we all lead from a place of support our values and principles. That's a pretty unfortunate place that she has pigeonholed herself into. While I agree that we all have partisan leanings, I have never aligned myself with a party. That's because I believe all perspectives are required to have balanced policy, and that's where Commissioner Bershauer has failed us. Ronald Reagan said, if we can agree on at least 80%, we are not enemies. She wants you to believe that we are. We need a county commissioner that doesn't make decisions to appease her base and donors, but has every single one of us in mind. And I am that person, and I am here to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bershauer?
Thank you. I think it's unfortunate that my opponent decided to end on such a negative note. We are not enemies, Bubba. One of my most proud moments, people have asked me, what's the thing that you get most excited about? One of the most proud moments that I've had over the past 3.5 years since I've been serving is a family that was living in Washington County, and they were watching through COVID. And watching for their leaders to stand up and fight for them. And they didn't see it in Washington County, but they saw it here. And they reached out to me after they moved to Yamhill County and said, we just want to let you know that we chose to uproot our family, move here, because we saw how much you were fighting for us and how much we appreciate that. We feel like you see us and you hear us. And that's such an incredible statement, right? Because this isn't really about me. I'm temporary. Someone will be in my seat someday. Someone will occupy Commissioner Johnston's seat someday. We have to stay focused on the reason why we're here, which is all of you. We are attracting law enforcement officials from other metro counties as well. We have made it very clear that we support our law enforcement community, and they are coming here, they want to work for us. That is a very positive statement that has come out of some very trying times and strong policy positions from the Board of Commissioners. I have strong working class and family values. I come from a working class family. And I'm rooted in principles of common sense, of fiscal responsibility, and of fairness. And I think if anybody takes the News Register, you know that over the past 3.5 years, I have been tested constantly. And I have proven that I have a backbone, and I'm going to stand up for my beliefs and my principles, because it isn't about me, it's about you. I'm here to serve you and protect you. This job requires a backbone. There is pressure constantly, not just from within, from different political factions, but also from outside of the county. People who want to see Yamhill County become part of Metro and embrace those policies. Because the secret about Metro is that they have to expand their policies in order to make them solvent. They are insolvent unless they expand. They need you as a taxpayer. They need your pocketbook. That is what we're fighting against. We want to keep Yamhill County, Yamhill County. And I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you, it's been an honor.
Thank you both. Do both candidates have materials that people can take in the lobby?
I hope so. Thank you.
All right, they will be there. So thank you very much for coming, everybody. And don't stampede out. Make sure you leave in a orderly fashion. And don't forget to vote by May 21st.